All right, it's early the morning of the Super Bowl, and you know what that means. It's time for some Smoking with Jim. Okay, so here's what we got. We got us a nice 7-pound Boston butt. We're not having a huge group over today. This will be plenty of food, but I'm doing a little bit of a different take. What we're doing is we're gonna do some barbecue stuffed baked potatoes. That's exactly what we're gonna do. I haven't had a barbecue stuffed potato in years. I'll never forget the first time I had one out at this great little mom and pop restaurant in Lenore City, Tennessee called Gerald's. And I was like, what are these people eating? I'd never heard of it. I was probably in my mid 20s, and it was unbelievable. So that's what we're gonna do for Super Bowl. Now, if you see here, it's pretty simple. I've got my yellow mustard. That's in honor of the Tennessee football program and the fans. Oh my goodness. And I'm just gonna do a real light coat of the mustard to form a little bit of a binder, and then also I'll be able to really see the rub really well. And for the rub today, I'm doing a hot barbecue rub from Killer Hogs Barbecue. I love Killer Hogs Barbecue, Malcolm Reed, and that's all I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna rub this down. Okay, you see here, I've got this rubbed pretty good. And so what I did here, you'll notice, you wanna be sure to get the sides too. All right, because this is a thick cut of meat. Now then I'm gonna do the fat cap on the top. So I'm gonna rub it down right now. Now you might be asking about that mustard as a binder. You won't taste it at all. But it just, like I say, it forms a little bit of a binder, and then it also lets me really see the rub and how much I've got on there. Okay, so as you see, I've got the fat cap done too now, and that looks really, really good. I'm sorry I don't have a videographer this morning. My wife told me she was not getting up with me this early Super Bowl morning to do this meat. Okay, I've got this grill heated up. Now, what I did on the smoker, I've got it at about 160 degrees. You want it, 260. You want it between 250 and 275. Now, you may be thinking, Jim, that's awful fast. That's awful hot to slow cook and slow barbecue something. I'm telling you, with the pulled pork, the shoulder, with all that marbling, it can take it. And this way it'll cook, probably take about 8 or 9 hours. It's pretty cold out this morning. I'll wrap it about halfway through once it gets a nice mahogany color. Now, oh, by the way, the mustard reference, for those of you that don't know, Tennessee played Ole Miss in football this year, and there was some real controversial calls down the stretch, and they didn't give us a first down on a replay, and people started throwing stuff on the field, and it delayed the game for about 15 or 20 minutes, and somebody threw a mustard bottle on there. So that was the football reference. So what I've got here, I've got it on the grill, and you see it right here. Looks real good. Now I've got the fat cap up, and that was something I really thought about. You know, this pork has so much marbling. Do I really need the fat to render down into there? One thing's for sure, if you have a heat source that's really coming from underneath, especially when you're cooking it at 250, 260 degrees, you really want the fat cap to be a buffer from the heat zone. The thing is, this pellet smoker, all that heat's coming up around the edges, and I've raised it up just a little bit. I don't have any issue whatsoever underneath that I need a fat cap to protect it. Now, most pellet smokers, you will need that. You'll want to put that fat cap down. But for me, I'm going to put it up so it can render down into that meat. Okay, so we're going. I'm going to check it in about an hour and a half. I want to start spraying it with some liquid to keep it nice and, you know, not get too crusty or dried out on the outside. I'm going to go vinegar and apple juice. I'll start that in about an hour and a half. I'm guessing it's going to take about 4 hours to get that nice mahogany bark. And then I'll wrap it in aluminum foil, pour some sauce in there, and it'll cook even. That'll help get it cooked too in time for the Super Bowl. All right, it's been an hour and a half. I got my sprayer, my big orange sprayer. Let's check this out. That really looks good. All right, so I'm gonna spray this a little bit. This is equal parts apple juice and apple cider vinegar. So we'll spray that down pretty good and give it a look, and then we'll check it again in about an hour, hour and a half. It has been just over 4 hours, and I will admit I did take a look, and it looks amazing. look at that nice mahogany color. I did spray it again at 3 hours. You know, I really don't think I needed to really spray it again. I mean, how good does that look? So I'm gonna pull this off and I'm gonna put it in a pan and pour some barbecue sauce over it and wrap it and put it back in. All right, that thing's looking really, really, really good. Now, when I put it in the pan, I'm now gonna put it flat side down because I wanna get the sauce all in there, and it's going a little bit mushy underneath. So that's kind of my reasoning for the fat cat. Now, I like a barbecue sauce has a little bit of vinegar in it. It's not too tart, but it gives it just a little bit of tanginess. So in this case, I'm using the Killer Hogs vinegar sauce. I also use Killer Hogs hot barbecue rub. I love their products by Malcolm Reed. And I'm gonna pour on here about a cup of this. Okay, and then I'm gonna kind of sop this around in here, and then I'm gonna cover it in aluminum foil and put it back on the grill. And we are ready to roll. I've got it wrapped, and as you see, I've got my meat thermometer in there. Now you want to be careful you don't hit the bone. This is a bone-in pork roast, so you want to make sure you don't hit the bone with the thermometer. So we're going to keep an eye on this. I want to bring that up to between 195 and 200 degrees, depending on how fast it happens. Because if I'm going to set it in a cooler, it's going to keep cooking, so I'll probably pull it at 195. But if it's a little bit slower getting there, I'll probably bring it all the way up to 200 and then rest it for a shorter period of time. I'm thinking it's going to take another 4 to 5 hours. So we'll keep an eye on it and watch the temperature and see when they're done. All right, there's an old saying in barbecue parlance, you know, the meat's done when it's done. And it's been less than 7 hours, a little over 6.5 hours, but it's done. So what I'm gonna do, I'm done in plenty of time. I'm gonna put it in this cooler. I'm just literally gonna take that pan, barbecue sauce and all, and I'm gonna set it in this cooler. Now there's still a little bit of work to be done because at the very end, I'm gonna finish it about 15 or 20 minutes in the smoker, and I'll show you exactly what I'm gonna do on that. But for now, I'm gonna set it in that cooler. I pulled it at about 197, 198 degrees according to the thermometer. I didn't test it in all the places of the pork, so I figure in the coolest places it may be around 150 or so. 195 or so. So I'm gonna put it in the cooler, and then when it's about time to finish, I'll finish it off. Now in a bit, I'll get out the baked potatoes, and I say baked potatoes, but they're actually gonna be smoking potatoes because we're smoking with Jim. All right, now it's time for the potatoes. The pork is still setting in the cooler. Here are my potatoes. I say they're barbecue stuffed baked potatoes, but because they're kind of baking potatoes, but we're gonna do them in the smoker because everything's better in the smoker. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna pour some olive oil on this, and I'm gonna kind of rub it in. And then we're gonna put a little bit of salt on it. But the first thing I have to do is kind of rub it in, and it forms a little bit of a binder, and of course the olive oil tastes good. Now, one of the things I thought about doing is, in these stuffed potatoes, that I want to do bacon. But I want the barbecue pork to shine. If I had done the bacon, I would do bacon grease instead of olive oil for this. But I want that barbecue pulled pork to shine, so I'm not going to do the bacon. Now, I'm excited about this. This is smoked salt. And it's from a company called Smoking Goat. It's in Blaine, Tennessee, which is about 15 miles outside of Knoxville. And I'm excited about this stuff. They make it and smoke it themselves. So I'm going to use this to coat the potatoes before I put them on the grill. So I'm going to put these kind of all over the potatoes, and then we'll be ready to put them on the grill. Okay, here's the potatoes. I'm not going to lie. I'm really excited about that smoked salt from Smoking Goat. At any rate, I've got them on here, and I've got them on 350 degrees. I'm going to leave them on here for about an hour and a half, and then we'll check them. My biggest thing is baked potatoes. You know, you need to make sure you cook them plenty long to get them nice and tender. They're going to be awesome with the smoke and the smoked salt combination. So we'll check them again. You know what? I'll check them in about an hour and 15 minutes. All right, it's been an hour and 15 minutes. These things are pretty soft, but you know what? I think they need to be softer. So I'm going to leave them for another 15 or 20 minutes, and we'll recheck them. All right, it's been an hour and a half on these potatoes, and now I have a videographer. And you know what? That's pretty dang tender. An hour and a half at 350, those should be good. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna pull these potatoes and I'm gonna put them in the warmer while I finish off the pork. All right, the potatoes are done. They're in the warming drawer. Now it's time to finish the pork. So I've had this sitting in the cooler for a couple hours, almost 3 hours. So now I'm gonna put it over here on this rack. And I've got this barbecue sauce here. And what I've got here, this is 1 part that vinegar base, that vinegar sauce that I showed you earlier from Killer Hogs Barbecue. And then I've mixed in with it whatever your favorite barbecue sauce is. 1 to 1. So I've done 1 part the vinegar sauce and then 1 part whatever your regular sauce is. And that way it does add a little bit more sweetness. And now I'm gonna brush this. And I'm gonna get it all over this pork. And then I'm gonna put it back in the smoker for about 15 or 20 minutes and let it caramelize. And that'll be all kind of caramely goodness. And then we'll be ready to pull it and stuff some baked potatoes. All right, it's time to pull this pork. So here we go. I pulled it off the grill. So just to summarize, when I pulled it off, it was about 197, 198 degrees. And I put it in the cooler, and it was in the cooler for about 3 hours. And then afterwards, after I did the potatoes, I put it back on the smoker for about 15 to 20 minutes, and I brushed it with the mixture of the vinegar sauce and the barbecue sauce. Get it kind of caramelized. So now, it's time to pull all this stuff apart. And as you can see, oh my, it's definitely falling apart. So let's find the bone here. All right, here's the bone. And look at how cleanly that bone comes out. Now that's what I'm talking about, is a well-cooked pork butt. So now what I'm gonna do here, now first off on this underside, I'm gonna kind of get this fat out. Just kind of peel that fat away. But now I'm just gonna pull this apart. And you know what, since it's still so warm and fresh, it'll just pull apart like nothing. And I'm just gonna pull it, and then once I pull it, we're looking at put together our loaded baked potato. All right, now it's time to put this potato together. So here I've got my potatoes that I've smoked, and I've had them on in the warming drawer for, I don't know, about 30 minutes. So now I'm gonna pick one out here. You know what, I'm gonna take a kind of medium-sized one. I'm gonna cut it open. And here's how I'm gonna stuff this potato. What I'm gonna do, so what I've got here, I've got butter, I've got cheddar cheese, I've got Monterey Jack, and I've got sour cream. So I'm gonna start with the butter. You gotta start with butter, right? I mean, on a good baked potato, you gotta have plenty of butter. Now I'm gonna do the sour cream. And then I'm gonna do mostly cheddar cheese. And then I'm gonna put a little bit of the Monterey Jack in there. Now, I'm one of those guys that when I eat a loaded potato, I like to mix all that stuff together. So, you know what? Before I put the pork in it, I'm gonna go ahead and mix it all together. I mean, technically, I would open this up and then put in the pork and the barbecue sauce, but I'm gonna kind of go ahead and cut all this up and mix it all together is what I'm gonna do. Because it's gonna be so good. And that'll get some of that butter in there and it'll melt. And get it all mixed together. Because you know what? Once I put the pork on there, that's what I'm gonna do anyway. I'm gonna cut it all up and mix it together. So that's what I'm gonna do. And I got plenty of potato. I think I need a little bit more butter. What do you think? Let's get a little bit more butter. All right, a little bit more butter. This is not a low-calorie dish, I'll guarantee you that. Okay, now here's the good part. How do you use the barbecue on something like this? So, as you can see here, I have pulled this barbecue, and I'm not gonna lie, I've had a couple of bites, and it is extremely tender. So I'm gonna kind of put it on top here. And then I'm gonna take some of this sauce, and this is the key, you gotta mix it all together. So I'm gonna take this sauce, and I'm gonna put it all over here, and I'm gonna mix it all together. And that is what I'm talking about right there. That is some barbecued pork. Right there. Now let's try a bite. We got to try a bite of this stuff. So I'm gonna get a piece of this. Let's see what we got here. Let's cut off a piece of this with some of the potato. All right, here we go. My trainer's watching me. He's thinking this is way too many calories. All right, here we go. Look at that goodness. That is all kind of goodness right there. And that is a barbecue stuffed potato.